Today's video is sponsored by NordLocker. Encrypt up to 2 gigabytes of Mac files for free at nordlocker.net/dailytech. Hey, it's Chris. This is just a quick intro to let you guys know I was working on this particular video the day the iPad Pro was announced when it came out. So I dropped everything and I started covering that when I was halfway through with this. So some of the information here is just slightly outdated, but most of it is really good, really entertaining, and I'm still really looking forward to this phone. By the way, this is talking about the new flagship iPhone, not the cheap new iPhone that should be coming out anytime. Let's get into it. Hey, it's Chris, back today with at least a smiling face for you to look at during these crazy times, and who knows, maybe I can bring you a little bit of a distraction or provide a little bit of entertainment and keep your life moving forward a little bit. And can I just say, I am super excited about the upcoming iPhone 12 lineup based on everything that I've been hearing. And actually, the more I hear, the more excited I get. Can I just be real with you for 1 second? The camera on the Galaxy S20 Ultra seriously had me considering trading in just to try it out. I'm curious about it. Or at least I was until I heard what Marquez had to say about the camera, at which point I was just like, well, nah, I'm just gonna wait for the iPhone 12, which sounds super exciting anyways. See, I'm a video guy, and the S20 Ultra features an 8K camera, which sounds incredible, except the crop factor is sort of a deal killer for me, and also it's locked in at 24 frames per second, which I don't like. And then by the time you add in the focus tracking and the rolling shutter issues, it just wasn't too appealing. So we're actually expecting 5 new iPhone models coming at some point, one of which is gonna be the iPhone 9, for lack of a better term at this point, which could start around $399. Okay, and then the other 4 versions are gonna be various flavors of the iPhone 12, which could range in price from $649 for the mini version up to $1,200 for the Max. Now, supposedly, if all goes as planned, which is a big if right now, we're looking at seeing the iPhone 9 sometime sooner rather than later, and then the iPhone 12 models sometime during the fall. Now, we don't know if that's still gonna be the case. There's a lot of stuff up in the air. And Apple probably won't appreciate this, but you don't need the latest iPhone 12 to be happy. I'm sure it's gonna be great, and I would look forward to it, and so would anybody, because it's the latest, greatest thing. But you don't need it. Your happiness doesn't hinge upon you getting the iPhone 12. So let's just keep perspective. One thing that we know, though, is that this is supposed to be the year when we finally see an iPhone redesign. I say finally, we know this happens. There's a TikTok cycle, and sometimes Apple kind of keeps a design around for about 3 years, but however you spin it, we're about due for a new design. Like what? What could that possibly look like? What should you expect? Well, maybe something that looks a little bit like a tiny iPad Pro, something with harder, straighter edges, instead of this rounded, curvier iPhone 10 look. And you know what? That sounds pretty cool to me. Another thing that you can supposedly look forward to is a notchless design. I'm just gonna go on record and say, and I've said this before, the notch doesn't really bother me on the iPhone. Yeah, phones look better without notches, that's for sure, but I've appreciated Face ID and the convenience and speed that is provided, and if they can work that into a notchless design, then cool. I'm just thinking, I'm a tech reviewer, so I stay pretty up to date with all the latest Apple stuff. There's gotta be an easy way for you guys to keep up to date. Oh, actually, there's 2 easy ways. AppleHype.com, that's gonna keep you up to date with the essentials that you need to know for the Apple ecosystem every day, and the Daily Tech After Party, that's our podcast. And they're both conveniently linked up down below. All right, next up, let's talk about the upcoming camera setup. And I know somebody out there's like, yawn, that's so boring. And I understand what you're saying. We already have a camera and it's already really good. And you're just looking for some shiny new feature. Well, there are a couple shiny new features to expect, potentially, but for me, the camera is still exciting because I use it all the time. And to have a better camera, that's still really exciting for me. One report suggests that we could see an upgrade to a 64 megapixel sensor for the main lens, which would be an upgrade over the 12 megapixel sensor that iPhones have been using ever since the 6S. They've just been squeezing every little last drop of goodness out of those 12 megapixels.
And of course, this would move the iPhone ahead of a lot of its rivals, like the Samsung Galaxy S20 Plus, for instance, which has a 48 megapixel sensor, although it would come nowhere close to the Ultra's 120 megapixels. That's a lot. Something else I'll just mention really quickly is that the ultra-wide lens might now be letting in 35% more light. More light is always better. I don't know if you know a lot about photography and lenses. I love really wide open lenses. I shoot with them all the time. And so that's really exciting to me. Now, the biggest and shiniest new upgrade coming to the iPhone 12's camera setup is probably gonna be the time of flight sensor, or the TOF sensor. The TOF sensor is gonna let the iPhone 3D map objects and the environment, which is gonna bring several benefits, but it may also increase the size of that camera bump. And just slightly, if anything, no big deal. One area where this could bring a big improvement would be to portrait photos, which can sometimes be a little iffy right now, especially around hair or certain edges. And the other thing is that it could also make for a much better AR, or augmented reality experience. Right now when you launch an AR app and you have to pan and scan all over the place so it can measure everything, you see the little dots and the lines, you don't have to do that anymore. When you launch, it's just gonna be really fast or maybe even instant. Now here's the thing. The non-Pro iPhone 12s are not likely to get this TOF sensor. I mean, they gotta distinguish between them somehow, right? And I have a feeling that people who aren't needing all the latest and greatest things really aren't gonna mind all that much. But then the people that do want the latest greatest are gonna like it a lot. One other small change that could be coming for the camera would be sensor shift image stabilization. At the moment, the iPhone 11 relies on gyroscopic and electronic image stabilization, so this would give us maybe better quality and higher resolution images. And also, it's just kind of interesting to note that this is actually a feature that's pretty common in higher end mirrorless or DSLR cameras in your phone. So let's talk displays. It sounds like all the new iPhone 12 models should have OLED screens, which means deeper blacks, more vibrant colors, just more dynamic range. Now, it's completely feasible that adding in these OLED screens could leave room for opportunity to make the iPhone a little bit thinner, but I think what's more likely is that Apple will fill up that space with either a bigger battery or some other kind of new tech. What's way more exciting, though, is the possibility of getting 120 hertz ProMotion display like we have on the iPad Pros coming to an iPhone. That I want to see, literally. It's one of those things that's hard to show on camera, but when you mess around with it in person and you see the smooth scrolling, it's just really nice. Next up, let's talk about the processor. Now, this is pretty interesting. Speaking of the iPad Pro, there was a Geekbench test that surfaced in the wild that supposedly showed off the power of an upcoming A14 chip. What does that mean? Well, that's the potential chip that could be in the iPhone 12, and it was faster or as fast as the iPad Pro. So what you would call Apple's chipset, it keeps making these big gains. And meanwhile, a lot of the competition keeps running into this kind of performance wall and not seeing the same kind of gains. So it's just Apple maintaining its lead here. 5G, it's almost a certainty that 5G is gonna land with the iPhone 12. Now, I talked more about this. I don't wanna repeat myself too much in the recent iPad Pro video. So if you haven't seen it, go watch that. But basically, much faster data speeds. Now, I already hinted at this earlier in the video, but the new iPhone 12s should see a pretty sizable increase in battery size, especially the largest model. Like how big? Well, the Max could see a 10% increase in its battery size. But you see, it's gonna need that power because 5G in particular, not to mention any other new components, can really be a battery hog. The last thing that I think is kind of interesting to mention here is that the next generation of iPhones could see a new generation of Wi-Fi implemented. Let's say that I was Apple and I wanted to produce a device that maybe was wearable, maybe on the face, kind of like glasses, and I didn't want it to be too bulky or too heavy, and so maybe I would think about powering that device with a phone. Oh, because people already carry those around and they're very powerful. Well, you would need some kind of Wi-Fi standard, whether it was short range or not. This new standard happens to be pretty short range, so fits like a puzzle piece right into this equation, that would reduce latency and could power high-resolution augmented reality situations. Well, this is what you would need. So that's pretty cool. Now, that may not be coming for a couple of years, the Apple glasses, but it has a kind of a more mundane thing that it could be powering sooner. We could see Apple's tile tracker competitor coming soon, and this would work with that. They've been referred to as all kinds of things. Let's just call them AirTags. NordLocker is a free-to-try encryption solution for Mac users that lets you store and share up to 2 gigabytes of encrypted files for free if you check it out at nordlocker.net/dailytech. NordLocker lets you keep your data safe with super fast encryption with an easy-to-use drag-and-drop interface and 24/7 tech support. Along with multi-device access, you can also share encrypted files through email, messaging apps, AirDrop, and even cloud uploads. With unlimited encryption, you can protect sensitive financial info, IDs, passwords, photos, videos, and notes. The link to get started is down in the description, so give NordLocker a try and use the coupon code DailyTech to save 32% off the available premium plan. All right, that's about it for this video. I'd love to hear from you if you're gonna participate in the iPhone 12 super cycle, if any of the things that I've mentioned would be enough to get you to upgrade, or if you'd be looking for something else, or whatever. Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to follow at DailyTech, spelled Daily T-E-K-K, on Instagram and Twitter. Check out the podcast, check out applehype.com, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Later.